Welcome to Life on Purpose, where we talk all things health, wellness, and living your life on your terms. I'm your host, Brandy Eilert. All right, welcome back to the Life on Purpose podcast in this very special Halloween episode with Dr. Kristy Sumner, who formed Soul Sisters Paranormal. And we're going to talk about all stuff paranormal, which is going to be just fantastic and kind of right up my alley with things that are really interesting and mysterious to me, you know, kind of one of those areas. But just a little bit about Dr. Kristy. In 2014, Dr. Kristy Sumner coupled her passion for travel, history, and paranormal when she formed Soul Sisters Paranormal, an all-female team made up of Sumner, her two sisters, and two friends. As a team of 5 investigators, Soul Sisters Paranormal traveled to some of the most historic and reportedly haunted locations in the U.S. in an attempt to determine for themselves if spirit activity does exist and to highlight the rich history of each location. The team traveled to and investigated at numerous U.S. locations, including the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum right here in West Virginia, the Lizzie Borden House in Massachusetts, the Villisca Ax Murder House in Iowa, the St. Augustine Lighthouse in Florida, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Tennessee, and many, many more. So welcome to the show, Dr. Kristy. I'm so glad that you're here. We were talking a little bit before. My daughter loves this stuff. I love this stuff. I was kind of that kid, you know, my daughter's 10. I was probably around the same age that I loved kind of the scary movies, but not like the blood and gut stuff, like the really creepy Amityville horror, most recently The Conjuring, that kind of stuff. So not to kind of, you know, make what you do really cheesy, but I love it. I love it. And I'm fascinated by it. And I don't understand it at all.
Well, maybe we can talk through that a little bit, but thank you so much for having me, Brandy.
Yes.
I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I really just kind of want to start from the beginning. I mean, I think what most people would want to know is how in the world do you become a paranormal investigator? And what is it about this research that you're like, you know what, I don't care what anybody else thinks. This is fascinating to me. Let's do it.
Well, how we got started actually was a girls' trip. My sisters and I live in different parts of the country. Mm-hmm. So we would routinely get together and take different girls' trips, do something unique in different cities across the country. And we had the opportunity to go to Moundsville, West Virginia. And we had a family friend that sat on the board of the West Virginia State Penitentiary. Yeah. And coincidentally enough, my grandpa was actually a prison guard there when it was still in operation, when it first formed as the penitentiary. So our family friend said, why don't you come up and stay the night in the prison one night and see if you can make contact with our resident spirits. And so we absolutely jumped at that opportunity, and it was a very routine investigation. We had a rudimentary investigation. And so we had some night vision video cameras and a couple voice recorders. And we came away from that experience with what we felt was very compelling, unexplainable evidence, such as footsteps running towards us in the dark when nobody was there. We had doors slamming when we knew that there was nobody in that cell block. And so for us, it really solidified the fact that, one, we wanted to go to these historic locations and first tell the historical narrative of those locations, and then see if we could validate or debunk some of the paranormal claims of those locations. So after we left Moundsville, we just decided to formally form Soul Sisters Paranormal. We came up with our name, our theme music, our logo, and all of that, because we really tried to, as much as we could, elevate paranormal activity and paranormal research, and elevate that in a more professional light. And so, so after that was in 2014. And after that, we've just traveled around the country and just got to visit some great historical locations and found some very compelling evidence along the way.
Well, what was fascinating, so I visited your website and I was looking at the list of some of the places that you guys have visited. And I really enjoy history in general. Mm-hmm. I imagine coupling that and being present in some of these places is just kind of, I don't know, overwhelming a little bit. But what were you guys doing before in your professional lives before you got into the research? Because this happened kind of later on.
It did. So to your point, we're all professionals in our established careers. So Jenny is an adjunct. Well, actually, she's a assistant vice provost at the University of Central Florida. I was a college professor at UCF as well as Metro State College of Denver. My background is actually in biometric security for aviation and airport access control. Two members of the team are lawyers, and then we have a master's holder who's a high school teacher. And so we all have advanced degrees, and really I think that leads us more further down the path of actually researching this rather than going in and trying to be, quote unquote, scared on a Saturday night or a Friday night. Right. We really delve into the research aspect of it because we do want to find out what's going on. We do want to find out, if we can really kind of add to the literature of paranormal activity to see if we can find out what's going on and what's going to happen next. And I think, like I said, when we go in with that research mindset, when we come away from these experiences, what we're left with is things that we can't explain. And by that, I mean, when we go in, we try to control the environment as much as we can. And when we have control of that environment, and we know that we do have control of that, and outside, and then something happens that is outside of the norm in that environment, for us, we call that unexplainable. So for example, when I'm in a location and we have it locked down, there's only 3 female investigators in this location. We have complete control over everything. We've accounted for light pollution, noise pollution, all of that. And I capture a male's voice that is extremely difficult for me to explain. And so that's what that's what we're looking for. That's what we strive to find. And so
how much time do you spend in these locations before the research actually begins so that you can account for, like you said, the noise pollution, light pollution, things like that? So you kind of know what your variables are.
And that's a great question. So the first thing that we do is we'll go in for at least a day. So say we have an investigation on a Friday night or a Saturday night, we'll actually spend the entire day before that investigation going through that location to the best of our ability. So we'll, again, to your point, we'll look for things like traffic noise, airplane traffic, train traffic, dogs in the neighborhood, kids in the neighborhood, anything that when we go into this location and we hear something similar or see something similar, we will explain that off as something in the environment. And then again, when we know that, those things that we're left with that fall outside of that are to us unexplainable. And so it's when we go into these places, I'll never say that, oh yes, this is haunted. For us, we say we captured things that are unexplainable, because if somebody comes back at one point and says, well, I think it's this, then I want to have that dialogue to see if we can actually figure out what it was. But as I said before, when we go in and we control for everything that we can, and yet we're left with these things that we can't explain, that's the stuff that we really enjoy finding.
So you've never come out of a situation, one of these locations, and said, this is definitively haunted. This is unexplainable. I can't explain, these things I saw or heard or felt. I think that's important for people to understand. So how do these investigations come up for you? Is it locations that you guys are interested in, or are they calls that you get from people saying, hey, I'd like you to check this out? How does that work?
Well, it's actually both. So when we first started this, we really, because we were new in the paranormal community, we really wanted to build our portfolio. So we went to places that I would consider quote unquote commercial, like Moundsville, West Virginia, or the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, the St. Augustine Lighthouse. So these are larger locations, they're known locations. So we will actually call them and make an appointment to go and investigate these locations.
And they have a reputation. These are locations that have a reputation of potentially being haunted. Yeah,
absolutely. So I
live here between two of them. I've heard of both.
And I love the fact that you do, because both Trans Allegheny and Moundsville are just absolutely hotbeds for paranormal activity. And so we'll go to those locations again to really build our portfolio, to get some credibility, in the paranormal community. And really also we use those to enhance our investigation techniques, because we're always learning, we're always growing, and we're finding different methods that work, or what we consider work for us. And then, when we really started doing that, and with our research-minded approach, we started getting clients that will call us, whether they're homeowners or business owners. And, almost to every person, they always start with, please don't think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm having this happen. Can you come and investigate and tell me what's going on? So to answer your question, both. So we'll search out locations, and then we have people call us.
And in your experience with the like private homes, do you find that those situations you have more explainable incidences, or have you come away from an individual situation in a home where you're like, yeah, there's a lot there I can't explain?
Both. You know, a lot of people, when they go into a location, like into their house, and they start to believe that they have some paranormal activity going on, they really kind of gravitate toward that explanation.
Yeah.
What we do, as I said before, we'll go in and try to look at things from a different perspective and see if we can find out what their answers are. So for example, we had a business owner call us, and he was convinced that his business was haunted. He had just moved into this brick and mortar location. It was a storefront, all glass storefront. He had mirrors running down the walls, display cases, and all of that. And so he set up night vision video cameras. And during the night, since he opened, all these cameras would start going off and on during the night. They'd be, going crazy during the night. And so he called us convinced that it was haunted. So we went in there, we spent like 4 or 5 hours during the night, and we could not validate any of those claims. None of our equipment was going off. We weren't feeling anything. So we left some of our night vision video cameras in different locations in that store. And so when I went back the next morning, I asked him if his cameras had activity, and he said, yes, they did. So I asked him for the timestamps of those, and I cross-referenced them with our cameras. And what we found was the way his storefront was positioned, it was on a highway that had a large volume of U-turn traffic. So when the cars would make that U-turn, the headlights would bounce into the storefront, hit the mirrors, and essentially blind his night vision video cameras to the point where they would go off and then click back on, therefore making it look like something was manipulating his cameras. And so we told him either move the mirrors or move the camera angles, and I think your quote unquote haunting will go away. And it did. And so we just go in with a different frame of reference to try to validate those things. Now, we have had places where we've gone into, and there's things that I absolutely cannot explain. So for example, we investigated a home, and it was just myself and another investigator, female investigator with me. And we set up some voice recorders and such, and we went into these certain rooms, and our equipment was going off. We captured we had asked the homeowners to leave. We captured male voices telling us to get out, to get back. One said, I'm back here in the corner. And those are things I can't explain because I know there was no men in the house. Yeah. And so in that instance, we'll talk to the homeowners and really decide what they want to do with that information. And
that
so
just gave me goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of it is, you get startled sometimes when you do this, but
sure. What is a person, I know this isn't your area, but when you do come to this homeowner and say, hey, yes, there are these things that we cannot explain, what are their options? Move away or?
Well, 7 out of 10 are like, that's awesome. I live in a haunted house. That's fantastic. I
would not be one of those.
But then you have those that say, well, what can I do? And so we tell them you can either, if it hasn't harmed you or, threatened you in any way and you're comfortable with it, just, you coexist with that entity if you want to. If they want it removed, or if they want the house blessed or cleansed, we do have individuals that we call. So we have an entire phone tree of either demonologists or priests or home cleansing experts that will come in, because that is a little bit different than what we do. And so, we've had clients that we've helped with that aspect as well. So that's kind of how we handle that. But like I said, most people are like, well, I just wanted proof that I wasn't crazy. And now I can tell it, because we'll give everybody, we'll give them a copy of all the evidence that we captured. And most of them just say, I'm going to go show my friends now because this is cool that I live in a haunted house.
So in essence, yeah, you're just either the person calling you, or you yourselves as investigators are looking for a validation of, are these quote unquote hauntings legitimate or not? So yeah, that's completely fascinating. So one of my big questions though too is equipment. Your research equipment. How do you capture the research, the voices, the video. I mean, what is all the equipment that you use? You come at it from all different angles, correct?
We do. So the very first thing that we take with us and we deploy, because when we go into these locations, we'll actually leave stationary pieces of equipment that will run the entire time we're there. So even if we're not in a room, we have eyes and ears in that room to see if we can capture anything. So the very first thing that we never leave home without are voice recorders, because we feel that EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena, those disembodied voices, if you will, those are the hardest for us to really debunk. Because again, if I'm an all-female team, yet I'm capturing men's voices or children's voices, that's hard for me to explain or to find a rational answer for. So we'll have those. We have night vision video cameras, battery operated, that we deploy. And we have body cameras that we all wear. So we have a timestamp of where we're at throughout the entire investigation. So if we do come across something, like say on a stationary camera, I'll cross-reference that with the body camera to make sure it's not one of us. We have different pieces of electronic equipment that we take with us that are handheld, that are designed to measure different things. So we have what we call K2 meters, and these are devices that are designed to measure electromagnetic energy. So theoretically, if we go into a location that has no power to it or electricity to it, these devices should not go off. They should not alarm in any way, but yet we've had instances where they do. We have another device called a REM pod, and it's the same premise, only it has an audible alarm. So if we put this down on a floor and nothing is acting upon it, no energy is acting upon it, yet it starts to alarm when I ask questions, that could be a validation that something's going on. We have a device called a spirit box, which is essentially an AM/FM radio that's been modified to very quickly sweep through AM and FM frequencies. So when you turn it on, it basically sounds like as it's running through these frequencies. The idea is that spirits can use the white noise to communicate. And so when you go to a location, again, it has a very low range, but so when you go to a location and you start picking up words or phrases that are germane to the situation, that could be evidence that something is trying to communicate with you as well. So we have those. We're very big on using what we call trigger items. So these are items that once we do our historical research, we take with us, or we modify and take with us, that could be used to elicit a response. So for example, in Moundsville, West Virginia, in the West Virginia State Penitentiary, there was a guy who was in there for years. He was in there for murder. His name was Red Snyder, and he was the leader of the Aryan Brotherhood, really bad guy. But while he was in prison, he was actually killed in prison. But before he was killed, his two vices were tobacco and watching Days of Our Lives. So every day they would wheel this TV in to his cell, or right in front of his cell, and they'd let him watch Days of Our Lives. So when we went in, what we did was we downloaded an episode of Days of Our Lives onto the laptop, and we put it in his cell, and we left. We let it run, and we let him watch it for an hour. And then we came back and started asking questions. And when we said, did you see what we left for you? We had a male's voice saying, yes, I did. And so, it's one of those things where we try to find something that is unique to that environment or that situation and bring it in with us to try to elicit a response.
Kind of a trigger. Yeah. I watched that video actually as part of my podcast research with my kids who, like, again, love this stuff.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for watching.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Again, you guys are braver than I love it, but I'm not sure that I could be present for it. So let's dive into some of your specific locations.
Okay.
And let's start with one of, I don't want to say like most haunted, but I guess one that had kind of the most evidence where you walked away like, yeah, maybe put hairs on the back of your neck.
Absolutely. So I'd say the first one that probably was the most active was the old Gilchrist County Jail. And this is in Trenton, Florida. It's about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida. And this is a small jail. It was built in 1928. It was in operation until 1968. It had 4 small cells on the bottom and then 4 small cells up on the second floor. And then it was connected via a doorway to a small 2-room jailer's cottage. So it doesn't have a very big footprint. And when it closed in 1968, it was essentially abandoned. And so, the ivy is growing up on it, and vines are growing around it. The Spanish moss is all around it. So it looks intimidating when you walk up to it. It's also not in the greatest of areas. So when we asked the owner if we could go in and investigate, she actually told us, if you carry, I highly recommend you keep your handguns with you at all times. That's the area that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so this night I've investigated there twice. So the first time I was there, I was actually doing a collaboration investigation with Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. Yeah. And so it was just she and I in the building the entire night, just the two of us. And we had our guns on us, and we had deployed all of the stationary equipment that I mentioned earlier. And we were walking around, and none of our equipment was really picking up anything when we first started. Like the first hour, we weren't really feeling anything. So Miranda said, I wonder if they think we're law enforcement because we have our guns on us. So she said, why don't we take the guns off and just show that we're not cops? So she took her gun off, or I took my gun off and put it on a cot that was in one of these cells. And she reached out and was taking her gun off, and she said, I'm putting it down nice and slow. And behind us, a guy's voice said, good. And after that, the night was on because everything, and if I could call it the perfect investigation, it was, because every piece of equipment that we had that night was validating every other piece of equipment. So for example, we have a piece of equipment called an Ovilus, and basically it's an electronic piece of equipment that has a word bank in it. And so we were asking questions, and we said, what is your name? And the name Robert came through on this Ovilus. And so later that night, we were using a REM pod, which again measures electromagnetic energy. And we had it in the middle of a cell, and we had backed off. So we were probably about 15 feet from it. It's not going off. There's no power in the building at all. And we said, Robert, are you here? And it starts alarming. And so afterwards, when we were asking the owner, we said, was there a Robert that was killed in here? And she said, yeah, there was a prisoner by the name of Robert. He was actually killed for his lunch. The other inmate killed him. And so that was really interesting. When we were walking away from one cell, we had a voice recorder in one of these cells. And when we were walking away from it, it captured, we didn't hear it in the moment, but when we went back and listened, it had captured a male's voice saying, kill them, which is kind of interesting. And then
talking about you potentially.
Yes, exactly. Potentially talking about us. When you hear stuff like that, it's like, that's a little intimidating, but
yes.
So it was just, like I said, it was a great investigation. We also, during the night, down one of the hallways, and again, very small, but we had a night vision video camera at the start of one of these hallways, and we had a laser grid sitting beside it. And we had this is Florida in July, so it was so hot. Yeah. So we had stepped out of the main door, but we could still see down that hallway. And it's pitch black except for this laser grid that is shooting green dots down and through this hallway. And we're just sitting there drinking some water, and I noticed a shadow figure run from right to left across the hallway, and it cut off the beams of the laser. And I said, well, if you're in there, do that again, run back the other way. And it did. The shadow ran back from left to right, and it captured it. So you can see in the night vision video camera, you can see the shadow cross twice, which again is very interesting because it shows some level of intelligence that it could hear us. And so I would say that the old Gilchrist County Jail is probably the most active places we've been to, one of the most active places we've been to.
Wow, we need to put that one on the map. That one I have not heard of.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Wow. Another one I'll just mention real quick was the Grand Old Lady Hotel, and this is in Balsam, North Carolina. And this was a hotel that was built in 1905 as part of the railway system, through that area of the mountains. It's 3 stories. It's immaculately maintained, so it looks exactly like it did in 1905. Hardwood floors. There's no televisions. There's no radios in there by the owner's choice. And so when we investigated there, it was just myself, my twin sister Jenny, and again Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations. And we had run of the complete property for an entire weekend. So we were there for 3 days. And so on Saturday night when we were sleeping there, we had prior to going to bed, we had heard all kinds of things. We were hearing footsteps. We were hearing children's laughing. We were down in the kitchen area, and I said, if you're here, can you just let us know? And the coffee pot turned on. And then we heard this table overturn. And when we went in to investigate, a table had been overturned in one of the guest rooms, because there's about 100 of these guest rooms.
Yeah.
And so during the night, on Saturday night, we decided to sleep in one of the suites of the hotel. And so it's a room that's divided really into two sleeping rooms, separated by a door, but there's only one main door into the entire suite.
Mm-hmm.
And so Miranda was taking the outside room, which had a double bed. And then Jenny and I were sleeping in the interior room, which had two queen beds. And so we had said our good nights, and we all had voice recorders by the beds that we were on. And I had a night vision video camera on the inside of the door and the outside of the door. And so we'd said our good nights. About 15 minutes after that, there was a man outside the door. He said, "Please don't go." And we captured it on everything that we had running in that area. And so Miranda said, "Did y'all hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "What did that sound like?" And I said, "There's a man outside our door."
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things that, I mean, we absolutely love to capture. And so we just said, okay, good night.
I'm sure it's completely addicting too. I think about, what would make you take this leap into this kind of research, given that, anybody could say, oh, that's just, junk science, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's something that you can't explain, there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
that you can explain away. I imagine that that's kind of addicting a little bit.
It really is.
I'm fascinated by things I don't understand.
Yeah. And it really is, a lot of people ask, are you scared when you do this? And we're really not. There's definitely been times when we've been startled. I mean, you can't sit in a prison cell block and hear a door slam and not be startled by that. But
Right.
we're really the type of people that run towards it to see if we can find the answers.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we hear and what we find on our cameras, we don't hear or see in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But when we go back and we listen to the audio, because we'll sit down after the investigation, we sit down and we listen to every audio piece of audio that we had running, and listen to all of watch all of the video that we were capturing that night. So when you're sitting there and you're just listening to silence, and then you hear a voice, it really is that adrenaline rush that says, okay, yeah, this is why I'm doing this.
Right.
Again, it is something that it's unexpected, but when you hear it, it's really is a thrill.
So I have a question, and it's something I've always kind of wondered. The most activity that you capture, is it always at night?
No. And that's a great question. So a lot of people do associate, paranormal activity with the nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the stuff that we've captured, it's actually been during the day. If you watch that Gilchrist County jail video, one of the best pieces of evidence that we captured, an EVP, was captured during our initial walkthrough, our day tour of that facility. Hauntings or paranormal activity is something that we capture in the daytime as well. But I think a lot of people just don't listen. And you've got that hustle and bustle of the daytime. And a lot of people
at night. Yeah.
It is. And at night you're using different senses, right? So when we go to these locations, even though it looks light on the videos, we're in complete darkness. And so you're relying on your hearing, you're relying on your sense of touch, your smell. Smell is a big sense that we use when we're on these investigations. And a lot of the equipment that we use, they do have light arrays. And so seeing them at night is definitely easier. And the locations that we go to, the commercial locations that we go to, most of them have operating hours during the day. So we can only get in at night.
Right.
But no, we've absolutely captured amazing evidence during the day.
That's really interesting. Like I said, I've always kind of wondered that myself, because you don't really, I mean, when you think of paranormal activity, it really, in your mind, it's at night. I mean, I think about my kids, their little hangout areas in our basement, and they can walk from the basement upstairs during the day, no problem. But if I tell them to go down, like at nighttime, go down and turn the lights off and come back up, they will like haul ass upstairs because it's dark, and all of a sudden, like, it's scary.
Yeah. Basements are kind of creepy. So I'd rather take an attic over a basement, I think. I'm right there with your kids.
Wow. All right. So let's go through another one. I mean, sure. I would love to hear, some of the stories that stick out the most to you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons we really do what we do, to your point earlier, is that we get to have a very tactile experience with history, right? So we get to
Yes.
go to these locations
Which is the best
that
part.
it really is. I get to put my hands on the Lizzie Borden doorknob, or walk on the floors of
Oh
the Villisca
gosh,
Ax Murder
yeah.
House, or the St. Augustine Lighthouse. So one of the investigations that was very unique and special to us was the investigation of the Ma Barker house. And this is a house. It's in Ocklawaha, Florida, which is as small as it sounds. It's
Mhm.
literally a one stoplight town. And in 1935, the FBI tracked two members of the Barker Carpus gang to this location. And the Barker Carpus gang was one of the most prolific gangs during the 1920s and early 1930s.
Mhm.
And they crisscrossed the country robbing banks, and they escalated into kidnapping in 1934, which really put J. Edgar Hoover on their trail, to really track them down and really essentially annihilate the gang. So in 1934, Ma Barker and one of her sons, Fred, went to this small house in Ocklawaha, Florida. They rented it in November of 1934. And so again, they used this as kind of like a hideout.
Mhm.
And so on January 16th, 1935, J. Edgar Hoover and his they called him the flying squad. His flying squad tracked the Barkers down to this house. A shootout ensued. It lasted 4.5 hours, and it's still
Wow.
the longest shootout in FBI history. Over 2,000 bullets were fired between the two parties, and
Wow.
it culminated in Ma and Fred being killed in the upstairs room of this house. Now, the owners of the house, that was the Carson Bradford family. The owners of the house, they did not know who they rented it to, but after the shootout, they had the presence of mind to preserve it as it was in 1935. So when you walk into the house now, there's bullet holes in the wall, there's bullet holes in the furniture, so you can
Wow.
actually take one of the rocking chairs and move it and line it up with a bullet hole in the wall. So it's a fascinating piece of history. It's like walking into a time capsule, essentially.
Right, right.
So all the furniture is original, all of the hardwood is original, all of that. So in 2014, the family decided that they were going to sell the land, but the new owner did not want the house. He was going to demolish it.
Oh
So
gosh.
yeah, I know, right? So
Yeah.
the county of Marion County purchased the house, and they put it on a barge in Lake Weir, and they floated it 2.5 miles across Lake Weir to a new location. So now the house sits on about 40 acres. There's no power to it. There's no water to it. You need a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get back to it because of the Florida sand. So when I found out that Marion County had control of it, I asked if we could be the first team to investigate this house, and they allowed us to do so.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to get in the house on the anniversary of the shootout.
Mhm.
So on January 15th, we set up our equipment. It would have been the 84th anniversary of the shootout. We set up our stationary equipment all throughout the house on the evening of January 15th, and then we left. We locked the doors and we left and let everything just run by itself for the night, to see if we could capture anything, because it encompassed the hours that the shootout happened on January 16th.
Yeah.
And so when we went back to listen to that audio and watch that video, we were capturing things like doors slamming. We heard a chair being dragged across the floor. We had a man's voice saying, "Get out." And the most compelling thing that we heard was two voices, and this was captured in the voice recorder in the room where Ma and Fred were killed. We
Mhm.
captured two voices. The first one said, "Freddie." The second one said, "Yeah, Ma." The first one said, "Get ready." And that to me is what we call a residual haunting. It
Yeah.
is something, it's almost like a blip in time. I believe that is what they actually said before the shootout happened. So after that, after we listened and watched all of that, my sister and I went back and we stayed the night in the house. Again, it's in the middle of nowhere, right?
Mhm.
So again, no power or anything like that. And we were capturing voices while we were there. We deployed that spirit box, that AM FM radio thing that I was talking about. And so we had it running, and I said, "What happened in this room?" And through the spirit box, it said, "They murdered us, we the ones dead." Now, if you think about that for a second, we've got an AM FM radio
Yeah.
that's that is running through frequencies at about one frequency every half a second. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's no way a complete phrase theoretically should come through that box. that says they murdered us, we the ones dead. And so for us, that was extremely compelling. Another question I asked was, is Alvin here? And Alvin Karpus was one of their gang members. I said, is Alvin here? And the spirit box said, Alvin Karpus. I never said the last name Karpus. And again, there's no reason why, if it was picking up a radio station, there's no reason a radio station would say the name Karpus when I asked it to. So again, these are just things that for us really build a compelling case that something is going on in the house. And that to us, being the first team to investigate that house, that was probably one of the highlights of our career so far.
Now, have there been teams that have come in after you? I mean, do you ever compare notes with other teams?
On that house, the Marion County has not allowed any other team to go in to this point. They may start doing that in the future, but so far we've been the only team to go in there. To your point, though, we do, when we have other teams that go to the same locations that we do, we absolutely talk amongst ourselves. We do compare notes, we compare techniques. You know, we've got several friends that own different locations or that manage different paranormal locations, and we'll routinely talk to them and say, you know, what did you capture here? What techniques did you use? Or, you know, I'll hear of a team going to, say, Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and I'll say, well, we had a great investigation there. I would try this, this, and this, or ask these questions, because we seem to get responses based on that. And so the paranormal community is a very interesting community, because it is really kind of tight knit in that way, where, you know, it's almost like a safe space for us to go in and really talk openly about what we do and how we do it.
Well, I mean, shouldn't research be like that anyway? You know, it shouldn't be super competitive.
Yeah, you would.
So, I mean, we all know that there's competitiveness in every field, but it seems like these things that have kind of these unanswerable questions, you would want to compare notes. You would want to kind of figure out what's going on. Hey, this team went in there and absolutely nothing happened. We went in there, we did this, this, and this. That team goes back in and tries this, this, and this. Does it verify?
Exactly.
Again.
And that's how it should be. You know, every now and then egos do get in the way.
Sure.
You know, kind of what we do when you tell somebody that you're a paranormal investigator, a couple of things happen. First, they either look at you like you have three heads, they want to tell you their ghost story, or they want to ask, is it like it is on Ghost Hunters, or is it like it is on Ghost Adventures, you know, where you see Zach going in and confronting a demon? Is it like that? Gotcha. And so when some teams get into this, or some investigators get into this, you know, they sometimes do go in with an ego, saying that I'm going to be the next Zach Bagans, or I'm going to be the next Ghost Hunter, or the next TV star. And, you know, that does get in the way of what I consider the legitimacy of paranormal investigations, if you will.
Sure.
For us as Soul Sisters Paranormal, our main goal with this, the very first goal, is to really go in and tell a historical narrative of locations that people might not know about, or they might not know the complete history of, and give them that narrative first before we get, you know, even mention paranormal activity. Give them that narrative first, because the historical part of it is really what drives what we do. And that is what I feel is the legitimate purpose behind us. And then we couple that with any unexplained evidence that we find at that location. You know, like I said before, you do have some people that go in and really try to sensationalize it. And if you want to do that, if a team wants to do that, or a TV quote unquote star wants to do that, that's certainly their prerogative. But for us, it really goes back to the historical aspect first. And then, you know, anything that we find, we'll release after that.
And that's, I guess to me personally, is the most fascinating part of it. And you think about some of the more popular quote unquote ghost stories that have come out in movies and cinema are all kind of based on a history of a location. I mean, you think about the Amityville Horror House, or, you know, the Conjuring, the first Conjuring, the house behind that, and all of those stories, they had to go backwards to kind of find the history of what was happening. And I think that's what's most fascinating. So going into these locations, you already have kind of an idea of the history of these places? And does that then drive, like you said, so when you were talking about Red, you knew where his cell was and where to kind of set up your equipment to see if in fact Red was the entity that was there haunting. So
correct.
You kind of have to have some background information there, which is pretty cool. So you have all this background work, this digging into history, which is so awesome. I mean, so fascinating.
Thank you. That is really what drives us, to be able to put those pieces together. I mean, I spend a lot of time in archives. I spend a lot of time on newspapers.com, on the Library of Congress website, the Smithsonian website, all state archive websites, really trying to dig into things that people might not know about, and that to me is the most thrilling part. For example, with the Ma Barker House, that is a location, because I'm from Marion County. So I grew up knowing the history of that house because my grandparents lived about 3 miles from there. And so we always knew about the Lizzie Borden or the Ma Barker shootout and all of that. But when we did this investigation, right after that, right after we released our video, we had newspapers calling us, we had television shows calling us, interviews to do, interviews with the news and all of that. And I had so many people come up to me and say, I never knew that this was here. I never knew that in 1935, Ocklawaha had the national spotlight on it, or that this happened in my backyard. And to me, it's fascinating to know that all of this history is out there and people don't know about it. And
so it's kind of inviting them to learn more.
Exactly. So if we can bring that to the forefront, if we can, make that information accessible to where people would want to go visit or put tourism dollars towards it to preserve it, that's what I feel my job is. And so when we're able to tell that historical story, that to me, like I said, is the most important part and the most exciting part about what we do.
That's amazing. So I kind of want to shift into some more deep questions.
Okay.
And I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame this. What is the explanation behind? Is it energy? Is it energy attached to a location? How do you, as a paranormal investigator, explain the unexplainable?
For me personally, and this is just, kind of what I believe, I think there's 3 theories as to why a spirit remains behind at a location. I do think that a spirit is energy. So we'll get that, we'll start with that, because energy cannot be created or destroyed. Right. So if we start with that premise, then when we die, our energy has to go somewhere. And I believe the first one is that there is some unfinished business, right? Something has to be fulfilled in order for that spirit to ascend to whatever's next. I'm a Christian, so I'll call that heaven. Sure. So to ascend to that level, there's something that has to be fulfilled first. And for an example of that, my granddaddy died in 1986. And I was extremely close with my Nana, who was his wife. And so when he passed, she and I just became closer at that point, and I'm actually named after her. And so in 2016, she had a fall. She broke her hip, and she ended up going into hospice, and she never really recovered from that. So about 2 weeks before she had that fall, I had a very vivid dream that my granddaddy came to me and he told me, I'm waiting on your Nana. You're going to be getting a call soon. And so when she passed, and with permission from my family, I looked at my sister and I said, I know where she's going. She's going to the spot in the dream, in this very specific spot in her house, where I envisioned this dream. She's going to meet granddaddy there. And so we took some equipment with us, those K2 meters that I mentioned. One is black and one is gray. And we stood on that spot that was depicted in my dream. And I said, Nana, if you're here, can you light up these meters? And both of the meters lit up. And I said, just to validate, can you just go to the gray one? And just the gray one lit up. And I said, one more time, just go to the black one and not the gray one, just the black one lit up. And so through a series of questions, I was able to determine what I feel. Nana met up with granddaddy and they moved on to heaven. They ascended after that. Yeah. And so that to me was his unfinished business. So once that was fulfilled, he's no longer here. His energy isn't here. He's moved on to whatever's next. Just to finish that story, just to validate, we went back about 2 weeks later with the same pieces of equipment and the same questions. and we did the exact same experiment and nothing happened. We didn't get any blips or any readings on anything. So again, that just kind of validated that experience. Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was kind of one of my follow-up questions too, is it difficult to have these unexplainable things if you have a religious belief? So say being a Christian, and having kind of these core beliefs, do people have a hard time weighing those two together? Like this paranormal activity, kind of this, and sometimes it can seem scary or ominous. Sometimes not, like the story you just told about your grandparents. How do people how do you, I guess, personally weigh those two together, doing what you do and also having a religious faith?
For me, actually, it strengthens my faith. If you go through the Bible, there are numerous accounts of ghosts. I mean, the Holy Spirit itself is an entity, right? So it actually validates my religious beliefs. I do think that, again, it really strengthens the fact that something does happen after this, that we do go somewhere. And I do believe that is heaven. But for some reason, again, there are those, I don't believe that everybody that passes is a spirit or a ghost that stays here or that can communicate with this realm, if you will. I believe there's very specific instances, my granddaddy and unfinished business being one, the fear of retribution being another one. So for example, if Red Snyder, in Moundsville, West Virginia, I think that he's so scared of what's happening next that he may be, going to hell or face some retribution for life, that his spirit just stays there. And so that's another reason why I believe it's there. But to answer your question, for me, it is absolutely, and the more I go into this, it absolutely strengthens my faith that something does happen after this, that we do.
So it reaffirms your belief in the afterlife.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, if you just look, when before Christ ascended, after he was put in the tomb, when his disciples first saw him, they said, is he a ghost? They have to have a frame of reference for that, right? It's not just a term that they made up or a belief that they made up. So there's always been this belief in an afterlife and in spirits. And so for me, like I said, it just strengthens my belief that there is something after this.
Right. Well, there's so much unexplainable in so many aspects of life. Yeah, it's very fascinating, and it's always been a question on my mind. Kind of that link between, how can you have a religious faith and then also think that there's these people that are left behind, or these energies that are left behind. And I think when you think paranormal, you go obviously to the ominous first, right? But like you said, it's not always ominous. I mean, I watched I think it was the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. You had a little girl, correct? With the red balloon.
Yep.
I watched that one. So that was not an ominous presence. It was a very cool video to watch.
Thank you.
But that wasn't ominous or scary or violent or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And it is interesting. And I think because of popular media and television shows, they do have to sensationalize this, right? So for example, Ghost Adventures, every episode there's a demon. I can personally tell you, I've been to some of the most haunted locations in the country, and I've never experienced anything that I would consider demonic. It's not, to us, not really like that. Really, when we go to these locations, if you watch any of our videos, the first thing that I say is, we're here to tell your story. We want to tell your story. And for us, we go in with a respect for the humans that they used to be and really respect them on that level. And because of that, we're met with some very interesting answers and very interesting communications and experiences, none of which have felt demonic, none of which have felt evil. There are some instances where things may be a little darker, and those are mostly occurring in jails or prisons.
Really horrible things have happened.
Exactly. Those are locations that weren't great when they were in operation. So we would expect to find that type of energy. But for us, we find that a lot of spirits want to tell their story and get the story out. And so for us, that is, again, it's validation, but it's also peaceful in my mind. The story with Nana and Granddaddy, that brought me comfort and peace. And I think, like I said, for us, it's not something that is evil or demonic or anything like that. It's just validation that we do continue on after this.
Well, and I think about the Catholic Church. My husband's family is Catholic. My kids go to Catholic school. I would consider myself a traditional Christian, but I mean, the Catholic Church has a whole office that sees these cases for exorcism. So, going back a really long time, obviously, even in, the Catholic faith, there is some idea of these presences. Presences that are
that's all right. We'll just go
behind.
Keep rolling.
Good thing I edit my own podcast. I can just edit that right out. That are left behind, and so there are kind of these ideas in the Christian community, Catholic community, that there are these things that we can't explain and that maybe need to be worked out. Those I think would be more towards, the demonology part of it, but
right.
But and the more ominous part of it. But yes, there is something that that would lend you to believe that both of these worlds do exist, and you can have a religious faith and accept both of them.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And don't get me wrong. I do think that there is a good, that it has to be, there is an evil that is outweighed by the good, right? So there is good and evil in the world. So do I think that demons exist? I do. I don't think that demons ever had a human existence. I just think, again, it's that evil part of the world. But that's not something that we go searching for, and it's not something that we've ever found.
Yeah, I wouldn't dabble in that one.
Right. But I say that to say, there is that mindset, there is that perception. My friend Miranda and I, we've actually are opening a location here in Huntsville, Tennessee, and it's going to be a museum. It's the old historic Scott County Jail. It was built in 1904, and so part of what we're going to be doing is having paranormal tours. And when we were speaking to the aldermen, one of them did raise a concern that he didn't want anything related to demons. And we had to explain to him that's not what we do. But again, it's that perception, I think, again, driven by media, that anything dabbling
that it's somehow evil.
Exactly. That anything dabbling with paranormal is evil, and it's not the case at all.
Yeah. That's a good thing to clear up. And again, which is kind of why I brought it up, because there is a little bit, and again, kind of going back to, only these things only happen in the dark. These misconceptions about paranormal activity, and which again, why this is going to be such a fun Halloween episode. I feel like kind of answer some of these questions that I had, and I'm sure other people have. But when do you guys open? I know you were talking right before we pushed record that you're working hard on it right now.
Yes, our grand opening is September 4th, and we're running around here trying to get, it's little things that you don't really think about, like extra trash cans and tickets when people buy tickets.
Office supply.
Yeah, exactly. You need tickets when people come in. So we just ordered tickets last night on Amazon. So it's just those little things, but we're extremely excited. It's one of these things that like I said, this building that I'm sitting in right now was built in 1904, and it was in operation until 2005. And there's just a lot of history in this town. Pretty much everywhere throughout East Tennessee just has a lot of history, and a lot of communities or members of the community really gravitate toward that history. So to be able to open this,
it's kind of their identity. I've spent some time in Tennessee for various things, but so how can people find out more about you, see some awesome videos, find out about the museum and everything that you do?
Okay, so our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com, and all the questions that you could have about us would probably be answered there. All of the videos that we put together for all of our investigations are on there. We also have what I call a spin-off series called Landmarks, Legends, and Lore. So all of the videos are on there as well. And we're also very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal, and on YouTube under Soul Sisters Paranormal.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Dr. Kristy, I can't tell you how grateful I am. This has been so much fun for me.
It has been fun.
And I hope everybody visits the website and the museum when it opens. Hopefully I can make my way down there also. Like I said, my family loves this stuff. Might have to leave the 4-year-old at home, but the older two, my husband and I would adore it. So
yeah, bring them on. And if I'm ever at Trans Allegheny again, you guys come on over.
Oh, give me a call. I'll tag along.
You're more than welcome. That or Moundsville. So
yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much. Hopefully see you soon.
Yep. Have a great night.
You too.